something I can't talk about.
Open! Open!
He's bent his way into Hollywood blockbusters. But what does the so-called rubber boy have to do with this baby in the ER?
As a kid, I had family members think maybe my father was hitting me, but that never happened.
Can he solve the mystery for parents accused of harming their baby?
Did you wonder for a second? Is there a secret?
Fractured family. Plus, do these two women have sex on the brain, literally?
She'd meet people and within seconds, she'd be offering them sex.
You look like such a demure, sweet young baby. I mean, truly.
A baffling mystery of how severe brain trauma and a car wreck put their sex drives in overdrive.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel healthy.
Is it all in your mind? And so terrified of getting pregnant, she's willing to become a runaway bride.
I just feel like I'm having like a hard time breathing.
What's the phobia that's so bad she could lose the love of her life?
Why are you crying?
I don't want to miss out on something that could be really special.
Tonight, My Strange Affliction. Here now, Elizabeth Vargas and David Muir.
Good evening. Tonight here, people who are so brave for letting us into their homes, sharing their stories, their strange afflictions that are so troubling they might not even tell their friends, but they are telling us tonight. And so we start right off with a husband and father who could be facing jail time right now because of a possible medical mystery.
Or is it a mystery about a marriage? The question, how well does a wife really know her husband? Tonight, a family that got so many death threats they had to change their address. They are desperate for answers, and a doctor is going out on a limb with a possible solution. Here's Deborah Roberts.
Cynthia Ross is frantic with worry as she and husband Brandon rush their 2-month-old son Ryder to the hospital.
So we packed up enough stuff for the night and headed to the emergency room.
Ryder's left leg is strangely swollen. They're desperate for answers.
They took Ryder in to have a skeletal survey and wouldn't allow us to accompany him. We could hear him crying.
X-rays reveal Ryder has multiple fractures: his leg, his clavicle, ribs, and more.
Found a fracture actually in each ankle. And then he had a lumbar compression fracture in his spine.
That sounds pretty scary.
It was terrifying, and I just burst into tears. Just, that's not my son. That can't be possible.
To Ryder's distraught parents, it seems like a medical mystery, but doctors suspect something far worse.
Child abuse.
Yep.
And when you heard those two words?
It was surreal. That's not us. There's just no way.
For Cynthia, a stark question arises. Could Brandon be abusing their baby?
Did you wonder for a second? Is there a secret? Is there something I don't know?
The child abuse pediatrician was like, these fractures are common. If your husband had done something like that, you probably wouldn't know. And I was like, well, is Brandon some person that I've never met? You know, how could that happen under my nose?
How indeed. Rewind a few months and the picture-perfect images tell a very different story. Precious babies, Rosalind and Ryder. The doting father. First kisses, sweet moments.
I am a mom. That's my identity. I love children. I love being pregnant. I love having babies. My imagination has us in a big farmhouse with kids everywhere.
Probably maybe around 4. We can have as many babies as we can afford. That's basically what I want to tell her.
Smart, practical.
Yes, he is very practical. It's not as whimsical as I am.
They'd married 3 years earlier. Brandon was 22, Cynthia 21. After Rosalind's birth, they moved back to Maine, where Cynthia's roots run as deep as the New England woods. And soon, another baby. Ryder is born at home.
Brandon spent a majority of my labor running hot water up and down the stairs like in movies.
The old times.
It was the coolest experience ever. I'm glad she did it.
For his first month and a half of life, it was just me and Rosalind and Ryder at home, and Ryder and I were inseparable.
But then, that night, when the perfect picture shatters in an instant and the accusations fly.
We were under the microscope, and then we realized that they were no longer looking for a medical explanation when the caseworker showed up to the hospital and said, "We're seeking custody of your kids. They're not going to be leaving with you today."
The doctor's report seems damning. Fractures caused by squeezing or possibly shaking. Police zero in on Brandon, though he says he's never told why. A detective knocks on his door.
So you were under arrest?
I was under arrest at that point. And the world just went dark and everything just changed.
Now a man from Bath is behind bars accused of abusing his infant son.
Brandon's now a suspected felon, his mugshot plastered on local TV and across Maine's papers. His wife makes a monumental decision.
Knowing my husband and knowing the kind of father he is, it just didn't reconcile. It couldn't be child abuse. It isn't possible. There's not a bad bone in my husband's body.
I want to ask you, Brandon, did you ever in any way harm yourself?
No, absolutely not.
Not
Never.
shaking him, not squeezing
Never.
him too hard?
Never. We were so delicate with him, He was, he's a newborn, you gotta be gentle with him. We already have a 3-year-old, so we know how to handle babies.
The young dad's indicted on 12 counts of child abuse, and a virtual wolf pack gathers, Cynthia says, as strangers post threats online.
When Brandon's story was all over the internet, the comments range from, these people should die. He'll get what he deserves in jail.
Things become frightening after their home address appears online, forcing the couple to quickly move. With Brandon branded an abuser, authorities err on the side of caution, taking the kids from both parents, placing Rosalind and Ryder with Cynthia's father, a registered foster parent. To see her children, Cynthia often wakes up in the pre-dawn darkness.
I'm just putting together some clothes for the weekend just so the kids have some stuff from home.
So much of her time spent driving back and forth to get Rosalind and Ryder from her father's foster home.
I'm hoping that the kids are up and ready to go, and I'm sure they'll be excited.
They are, and soon are ready for a day of visitation with their mom and grandma.
Okay, perfect.
Back home, Brandon's forced to view some of his son's milestone moments on his cell phone, like Ryder taking his first steps. In their new home, old family memories hang on the walls, a stark reminder that Rosalind and Ryder are forbidden to live with their parents.
So they've never spent the night here?
Never.
Cynthia wants those bedtimes back, wants to clear her husband's name.
When he was arrested, I started to take my vows extremely seriously. There was no more space for doubt. He couldn't fight for himself. I needed to step up and be his voice and figure out what actually happened.
She's now consumed with finding an answer. What else might have caused her baby's fractures? Late at night, Cynthia scours the web.
I just started reading a lot of information about metabolic bone diseases and looking at Ryder's case and what I know about our family. It just wasn't adding up.
But there would be no breakthrough found online. Instead, the case is about to take a strange twist. Could this man, a former circus performer and master of contortion, help solve the mystery of Ryder's fractures?
I can dislocate both arms, both legs, turn my torso 180 degrees.
When we come back,
My Strange Affliction continues. Once again, Deborah Roberts.
some call him a medical marvel. But Daniel Browning Smith calls himself Rubber Boy, a body-bending contortionist who twists into a human pretzel.
I hold the Guinness World Record for the most flexible person on the planet. I'm a stunt man. I break my arms and legs in movies.
Like Men in Black 2.
I've been aliens in movies.
That's Daniel in the green bodysuit, impossibly inside that box. And on TV shows like CSI Las Vegas.
I was a serial killer named Squeagle, my favorite role I ever had.
And HBO's Carnival.
I was a contortionist in the sideshow.
And that's him in this Coke Zero commercial, sipping a drink from a don't try this at home angle. How does he do it? It's a rare medical condition.
I'm diagnosed with a disease called EDS.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a collagen disorder that can lead to loose and unstable joints, even startling bone dislocations.
My ribs actually dislocate and poke out of my chest. I see completely how EDS could explain childhood injuries. EDS makes you bruise really, really easily. As a kid, I had family members think maybe my father was hitting me or something like that, but that never happened.
Never happened, which is exactly what Cynthia Ross is telling authorities in Maine. She hasn't heard of Rubber Boy, but could his condition possibly offer an answer to her nightmare? Her baby Ryder injured, her husband Brandon accused. Instead, Cynthia's first ray of hope comes from her grandmother watching an episode of Katie Couric's talk show and seeing a couple with a story stunningly similar to Cynthia and Brandon's.
We're here with Bria and Andrew Huber, who fell under a cloud of suspicion after their infant daughter Kenley suffered multiple unexplained bone fractures.
The fractures discovered after Andrew was alone in the house changing 3-month-old Kenley's diaper.
I lifted her right leg to start to clean, and there was a pop. She shrieked and cried, and I immediately pulled back and was shocked and didn't know what it was.
He takes Kenley to the children's ER, and after a battery of x-rays, like Brandon Ross, Andrew is soon arrested and charged. Bria says police tell her husband's a secret abuser.
You get a kiss? Oh.
They thought that he was so in love with me that he was jealous of the time that Kenley took from him. Therefore, he was taking it out on Kenley.
Bria doesn't buy it. They hire a high-powered Texas lawyer, and Bria sets out to discover what might be wrong with their baby girl. Crisscrossing the country with Kenley, but finding no clear answers.
You took Kenley to, I guess, 9 different doctors in 5 states, trying to get to the bottom of this.
It was extremely frustrating. Obviously, I would fly across the country only to be told, "Are you sure your husband isn't abusing her?" Because that's what it looks like.
Until she discovers Dr. Michael Hollick, a biochemist at Boston University School of Medicine.
If you now clinically evaluate this infant,
he offers a radical theory, one that makes him a kind of lone wolf in the medical community, that EDS, Daniel's rare condition, might cause not just joint dislocations, but fractures in the bodies of some children.
How does it present?
It can present with fractured bones, what we call bone fragility, with minimum handling of the infant.
After performing physical exams and reviewing x-rays and medical histories, Dr. Hollick diagnoses both Kenley and her mom with EDS.
I got to see Kenley in my clinic, and there was no question, in my opinion, that she has classic EDS.
That diagnosis finally helped sway prosecutors in Texas to dismiss abuse charges against Andrew, reuniting him with his young daughter.
They knew they weren't going to win that case from a legal standpoint. They could not prove anything. So before you go taking children out of loving parents' homes and very closely ruining lives, it's a dangerous game to play.
The Huber story is now a lifeline to Cynthia Ross, back in Maine, searching for answers about her son Ryder's multiple fractures. When she hears of Dr. Hollick,
I just packed up my mom and my son and we drove down there.
To Boston, where Dr. Hollick agrees to review Ryder's case.
So once you looked at all of these x-rays and all of his fractures, you concluded what?
Well, I concluded that based on my physical exam of Ryder, that he has EDS, and the likelihood is that these multiple fractures could have been due to the underlying genetic disorder, EDS and bone fragility, and not due to child abuse.
What did you think when you heard that?
That family in Texas had the same diagnosis, and everything was dismissed, and they were able to be a family again. And I was just sure that we were just some formalities away from being whole again, and our kids could be home.
But the state of Maine isn't swayed. Unlike prosecutors in Texas, the case against Brandon is going forward. Maine authorities declined to talk to 2020.
It just seems like the medical evidence is being completely ignored.
In fact, Dr. Hollick's theory has set off a firestorm in the medical community. One doctor we spoke with pointing out there's no published scientific evidence linking EDS to fractures in infants. Dr. Hollick admits he is breaking new ground. He says he plans to publish his findings soon.
Do you worry that you could be wrong? That you could be sending a child back into the hands of abusive parents?
I worry about this all the time, and I make it clear to the courts that I don't know the parents.
And yet,
I've seen over 1,000 of these patients, and even as adults, they're at extremely high risk for fracture with minimum trauma. So it's not a surprise to me that just typical normal handling of the infant can result in these fractures.
But even with the EDS diagnosis, Brandon's still living under a cloud of suspicion. still separated from Ryder and Rosalind, while his wife refuses to give up, reaching out to other families familiar with their nightmare, including her new friend Bria Huber in Texas, who offers some hard-earned advice.
Just cling on to the hope that the truth will eventually come out and that you will be redeemed. For us, that took 14 months, and hopefully for them, it won't take that long.
Ryder's first year of life has mostly been spent away from you.
And it's something that we'll never get back, all of his firsts. So when the children come home, it'll be like starting from square one.
You said when they come home.
Yeah.
Well, as of tonight, Brandon is out on bail awaiting trial. So what do you think about the case? Let us know on Facebook, our Facebook page, and on Twitter. Use the hashtag ABC2020. Elizabeth and I will be right back.
Next, how did a brain injury turn this demure, soft-spoken married woman into a woman on the prowl for men?
It wasn't a come hither look, it was a come
get it look.
And will their marriage survive?
It's hard to even imagine you doing all these things.
When My Strange Affliction returns.
A serious injury to your brain can cause all sorts of medical issues, amnesia, blackouts, seizures. But this next strange affliction involves the libido. People who survive traumatic brain injuries only to find themselves with a new sex drive that's in overdrive. This is Alyssa, just Alyssa, no last names. It's that kind of story. She's 23, single, lives in Vancouver. Behind that bold blue eyeshadow, an ordinary woman with a strange tale of desire gone wild.
Do you ever imagine that car accident could so change the course of your life?
I think that as people, we'd like to think that our personality is a bit more stable.
And this is Heather, happily and normally faithfully married to her husband, Andy. They're from England. She too has a story that would make just about anyone blush.
Walking down the street for a while was hazardous.
She'd catch people's attention, you know, guys. She'd just give them a look.
I was never subtle with it. It was never subtle.
You were never subtle?
No.
It wasn't a come hither look, it was a come...
Yeah, get it look.
Two women, a world apart, with one thing in common, a brain injury that transformed them in ways both intimate and unimaginable. Trauma threw a switch in their brains, supercharging their sex drive. Their story might be called 50 Shades of Grey Matter.
I think I was doing some gardening that day and I collapsed in the garden, and I can remember a huge pressure in my head and knowing that something was really wrong.
Heather's X-rated odyssey begins with a subarachnoid hemorrhage, massive bleeding in her brain. It left her in a coma for 2 weeks. Doctors were not hopeful.
They said it's not good and she's probably not going to survive.
During our interview, a moment of brutal frankness that shocks Heather. He tells us in a way he did lose his wife.
The wife that I married died on May the 21st, 2005.
That's really sad.
It's true though.
It's not.
That's what happened.
Heather emerges from the coma with a voracious interest in sex, starting in the hospital.
So she wanted to have sex with you in the hospital bath?
In the shower room.
While she was still hospitalized?
Yeah.
After she was released, it only got better. That is to say, worse.
So what are we talking about, every day?
Yeah, 2 or 3 times a day.
2 or 3 times a day?
It was emotionally hard, it was physically hard. It was hard.
You got sick of sex?
Not sick of it, but just sort of bored of the frequency of it.
And then one day, as Andy watches, Heather crosses the street from their home to pick up a construction worker.
This guy called her over and she went over. When she got to the doorway, he kissed her on the mouth and I was like watching.
She crossed the street and she's
kissing
making out with a man.
And I'm just watching thinking, what's happening there?
Heather begins propositioning and groping other men left and right.
She'd meet people and within seconds, she'd be offering them sex or even sort of having sex with them.
You look like such a demure, sweet young thing. I mean, truly. It's hard to even imagine you doing all of these things. Is it just an urge to have sex?
I think so.
Experts say brain trauma often causes a decrease in libido. Only rarely does it cause the opposite, what doctors call hypersexuality. Heather and Andy met with Harvard neurologist Dr. Alice Flaherty as part of a British documentary.
These things here are your temporal lobes, and a lot of this is what was damaged when I looked at your CT. This is where the aneurysm, the blood squirted out and hit this the most, and also causing damage to the hypothalamus, which is down in there, right in the center of the brain. Right up at the front of it is this thing called the amygdala. It's very important for fear. And I think you're more fearless. You're more fearless. You're able to approach things and do things that you wouldn't before.
Andy estimates Heather had sex with about 10 other men, but behaved inappropriately with as many as 50.
Heather, at the time, she couldn't see that there was anything sort of out of the ordinary and that she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She was like, well, why can't I?
Didn't matter how old they were, didn't matter how handsome they were, it didn't matter how fit they were. It just mattered that it was a man.
It wasn't about the guys, it was about her.
It's like sport, you know, going out and seeing if there was
anybody around.
Yeah.
In Vancouver, Alyssa is also trying to manage a new sexual personality, which she traces to a car crash in 2008.
The car flipped over 3 times, I hit my head, and the next time I woke up was in the morning in the hospital.
She had been a typical teenager, she says, interested in fashion and sewing. Her experimentation mostly confined to hair color.
So you weren't boy crazy, as they say?
Basically, yeah.
And you'd had basically one sexual experience?
Yeah, with one guy beforehand.
But from this crumpled wreckage, Alyssa says she emerged a changed person.
So what did you begin to notice about yourself?
I was tired, I was depressed, anxiety, I was withdrawn socially.
The area of her brain injured in the crash was the frontal lobe, the part that controls impulses.
Everything needs a braking system. Everything needs some sort of control. And when there's none, it's usually a disaster.
That brake failure led to Alyssa's strangest affliction.
How much of your thoughts after this brain injury were taken up with sex?
There was definitely much of the day.
Scott Stanley is Alyssa's attorney.
Before the accident, she was just a normal kid, and then afterwards, she would use this expressly explicit language detailing sex and would say things that would just cause people to shudder.
This had to be such a big dramatic difference, to be not really very interested in sex and then all of a sudden obsessed with sex. Did you suspect it was because of the brain injury?
I think at first I just blamed myself. I just felt a lot of shame.
Alyssa says she couldn't stop herself, but she couldn't enjoy herself either.
I don't necessarily physically actually enjoy sex all that much. I'm doing it to satisfy a compulsion. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel healthy because it's not.
Making a virtue of a vice, Alyssa now sells provocative videos of herself under an alter ego, Sasha Misery.
Just listen to my voice.
Her sexual compulsion was cited by her lawyer as part of a lawsuit against the driver responsible for her accident. The judge awarded her $1.5 million.
The judge agreed with us that her increased sexual activity, her sexual impulsivity flowed from her frontal lobe brain injury.
She's in therapy and on medication and says just recently her sexual urges have begun to diminish.
So now you're not at a point where every waking thought is about sex?
Right now, knock on wood, no.
What she really wants now, she says, is someone to love. Heather and Andy's outcome may give Alyssa some hope. Heather's desire has been dampened by therapy and prescription drugs, sort of a pharmaceutical cold shower for her overheated libido.
Do you still have those urges, or are you just better at controlling them?
I don't think I have them so much at all now. But also I make sure that I'm not in a situation where there's only me and a bloke, you know. I just make sure that that never happens, really.
They're now celebrating more than 20 years of a marriage that truly tested nearly every vow. Some say it might sound fun or even funny at first, but could you live like that? Let us know on Twitter. Use the hashtag ABC2020.
And coming up here, a strange phobia we discovered a lot more common than we thought. Elizabeth, you said you could even relate to this.
I can, I have it. I'm one of millions of women who do. We'll tell you what it is when we come back.
Next, she's got the man, she's got the dress, but she's also got a paralyzing fear that could keep her from starting a family.
Why are you crying?
I don't want to miss out on something that could be really special.
When My Strange Affliction comes back.
So many would ask, why would a young woman madly in love be terrified of getting married? It has nothing to do with pre-wedding jitters or changing her mind about her fiancé.
She suffers from a phobia that affects millions of people in this country, almost all of them women. Until recently, many of those people suffered in silence because it was frankly embarrassing to admit. And I was one of them. To stand at the center of Jessica Mellon's world is to live in the heart of primal fear. Heart racing.
You don't know why it's happening.
Blood pressure rising.
Really don't know how to stop it.
Every sight and sound around her distorted by her terror.
You feel like you're just gonna snap and go nuts.
Jessica is one of more than 40 million Americans who suffer from anxiety disorder. Its symptoms are all over YouTube.
I can't stop hyperventilating.
Intense panic attacks triggered by anything from driving a car to flying in a plane to riding in an elevator.
Open!
Jessica is afraid of all of those things, but her most powerful phobia, the one that fills her with the most dread, is this.
If someone's like, you can either be shot in the leg or you can throw up once, I would be like, yeah, just shoot me in the leg. I would really pick that.
You would choose being shot in the leg.
Absolutely.
Jessica is intensely afraid of vomiting.
To me, that's one of the worst things that could happen to me, if not the worst.
It's called a metaphobia, and millions of people have it, including me. I've had it all my life. I would do anything for my 2 children. I would die for them. But if one of them vomits, I run. And it's very embarrassing to admit it.
I thought I was crazy. I didn't know that there were other people like me suffering from this. I thought that
a lot of people like you.
Jessica's entire life is choreographed around protecting herself against the possibility of throwing up, taking every precaution against catching the flu from coworkers.
I would be like, are you sick? Is it a stomach thing? Is it something you ate?
To the pharmacy in her purse, armoring her against throwing up.
I do carry extra medication on me.
Antacids, tummy drops, cough drops, hand sanitizer.
To take one of these tablets twice a day, that's 2 days.
Do you ever feel frustrated?
Absolutely.
That you're this out of control?
The fear just engulfs and it swallows everything around you.
Everything, even the lifelong dream she and her fiancé share.
I've never been this scared in my entire life, I don't think.
Jessica is so terrified of getting morning sickness, she's told the man she loves she won't get pregnant. And that's putting the most important relationship in her life at risk.
You know how extreme that is, right?
Yeah.
To give up bringing your own baby or another life into this world simply because you're afraid you might have morning sickness and throw up.
I know. Sorry.
That's okay. Why are you crying?
Because I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want to miss out on something that could be really special between the 2 of us because of my phobia. It's not fair to him either.
But right now you simply can't.
I can't.
Marvin and Jessica met and fell in love while working at a restaurant they owned together in Philadelphia.
We just automatically clicked right off the bat.
Everything was going well until they started planning a wedding and a family.
How fraught did your relationship get as a result?
I told him that if he felt like he couldn't continue with this relationship because I might not be able to do this, that obviously I would be devastated, but I would have to let him go. I'm scared what it's like if I can't get to this point where I feel like I'm okay to get pregnant, like what that's going to mean for us in our relationship.
Jess, it's not ideal, okay? But neither are a lot of things in life.
In the beginning, did you think it was funny? Like, are you kidding?
I just thought that she essentially didn't care enough to try. I'm like, you're not willing to even risk throwing up to have a kid with me? I mean, I took offense to it.
And now Jessica's phobia has gotten so extreme, she's begun researching hiring a surrogate to have their baby.
And how much would this cost? How much do you, approximately?
Between $40,000 and $90,000.
$40,000 and $90,000?
Yeah.
Desperate to conquer her phobia, she chooses a radical path. The treatment we are allowed to tape is rarely shown on camera. Her doctor is Stephen Tsao.
We have to be deliberate about let's confront this and let's really confront it.
Dr. Tsao was talking about exposure therapy.
He's throwing up into a toilet.
The goal is to desensitize Jessica to her fears by directly confronting them.
I feel like I can like smell it.
Suddenly, her eyes fill with tears as a memory she's repressed surfaces.
I think I'm starting to remember why I'm so scared of it, which is making me really upset. The last time I got sick when I was younger, I was throwing up so bad I couldn't breathe, and that was really scary.
It's the first major step toward learning to control her phobia.
You should be really proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Over the next 5 months, the attack is relentless and targeted. From pictures of people throwing up to eating food she thinks is unsafe and will make her sick. Time and again, he forces Jessica past her comfort zone. But with just weeks now until her wedding day, Jessica's still not sure whether she's ready to get married because she's still afraid of getting pregnant.
I can't have a child until I feel better about this. I'm tempted to just make myself throw up.
Jessica is horrified when Dr. Tsao asks her to do exactly that at their next session.
Is it this one, or is there's a next one? Okay.
Down this hall and into the claustrophobic confines of a tiny bathroom, Jessica is about to take a leap of faith. But after an hour and a half of tears and frustration,
I can't do it.
she may feel defeated, but the goal was never about actually throwing up.
The goal is all of the anxiety that comes with throwing up.
Mm-hmm.
I want all of that to go through.
I know you're trying hard. You don't have to say it.
Marvin still hopes she will someday have his baby, but for now, he is willing to wait.
The more and more I realize that she is actually like deathly afraid to throw up, the more it becomes like real for us, you know?
The therapy has helped Jessica a little and helped Marvin understand a lot. And so the reward of those 5 brutal months came on a beautiful fall afternoon. Anxiety was only a brief guest at the wedding.
What happened when you waited there in that gorgeous dress of yours?
The anxiety started to climb, it started to increase, because I was like, okay, my turn's coming up, my turn's coming up. My mom walked me down the aisle and I said, Mom, I'm having a panic attack. I'm like, I need a drink of water. And the woman at the venue was like, we don't have time. And I was like, I don't care, I'm not gonna make it.
What was happening? Was your heart pounding? Were you shaking?
I felt like I was choking.
Despite those moments of panic, Jessica was no runaway bride.
I just have to keep trying my best.
It was Marvin who was an emotional wreck at the altar.
What has been joined here today,
it's for me, and it's for him, and it's for us.
I now pronounce you,
but at the end of the day, it's for me.
husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Marvin and Jessica Graf.
Next, from crazy fun
Here we go.
to just crazed with a medical mystery.
I've tried everything, and nothing seems to stop it.
Confessing her most private, lifelong secret to a camera.
It feels like my fingers are magnets, and they're attracted to certain parts of my head.
When My Strange Affliction returns.
Up to 11 million Americans, mostly women, are affected by our next strange affliction. But only one has had the courage to bear it all on camera and become an internet superstar doing it.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the high-octane Technicolor world of Becky O.
Here we go. Long story. Hold on. Hello.
Those quirky antics won her thousands of YouTube fans. But what blasted Becky O to fame was going public with the most private of secrets.
This is something I can't talk about. I've tried everything, and nothing seems to stop it.
She, like 10 million Americans, suffers from a compulsion to pull out her own hair.
It's something I can't stop.
That video exploded, had hundreds of thousands of views. It really opened my eyes to how big the condition was.
You didn't know anybody else who pulled their hair?
Nobody at all. I thought I was on my own.
For Rebecca, it's tough living in a culture obsessed by hair, surrounded by women crowned with long, shining locks. So she took her battle to the internet, vlogging about her struggle with a disorder called trichotillomania, literally the mania to pull out hair. She calls herself a trickster.
So is it a relief or a release to pull?
Pulling makes me feel better. But then when you see the damage afterwards, then you think, oh, no, okay, that's actually making me feel worse.
You would have a bald spot the size of your fist?
Yeah, this is the most hair I've had in 5 years. And that terrifies me.
Why does it terrify you?
Because I'm always worried I'm going to lose it.
As a child, she often played with her hair, but the vlogs of her teenage years reveal a habit spinning dangerously out of control.
I can just pull out yanks of hair. I've got hair surrounding the keyboard, and it's...
I remember when I was 12 and I was with a counsellor, and she said to me, when you're stressed, where do you feel it in your body? And I remember my answer. I remember holding my hands up and going, in my fingers. It's here.
It's not here, it's here.
It's here. I want to do things with my hands. The most weirdest thing about pulling is it feels like my fingers are magnets and they're attracted to certain parts of my head.
Nothing could keep Rebecca's fingers from pulling her hair, not tying her hair up in a turban, or greasing her eyelashes and eyebrows with Vaseline. Even the most extreme measures failed to help.
I found just tying my hands to tables or chair legs or to my tummy when I was at school, it stopped me getting to the hair.
So that you wouldn't reach up and pull your hair.
You get to a point where you're just so desperate.
That desperation was often driven by the hurtful comments from her peers at school.
If I'd had the hair, if I didn't have this, then people wouldn't have treated me so badly.
Worst of all was the criticism from friends and even family members, which she repeated in her vlogs.
You'll never get a job looking like that. Don't you realise you're doing it to yourself? Looks like someone went too far with the tweezers. No one wants a bald girlfriend.
There were a lot of really
every single thing.
Harsh comments.
Tricksters receive such severe backlash.
Why is that, do you think?
I think people don't appreciate that you literally cannot stop. It's not even a choice.
I can't leave it alone.
It had been a 6-year roller coaster of frustration documented in this astonishing video diary.
On the 3rd of February 2011, I decided to shave all my hair off.
When I shaved my hair, I thought, right, that's it. The hair's gone. I'm not going to pull again. It's all good. But then I attacked my eyebrows and they vanished within a week.
I have always loved cameras. Oh, and the colour pink.
Rebecca, now a superstar in the trickster community, caught the attention of Jillian Coursey. She was casting for a documentary on trichotillomania.
What's the biggest misconception?
That it's rare that people who have trichotillomania are freaks. The people I've spoken to feel isolated or like outcasts, like they don't belong.
Jillian's documentary, called Trickster, explored the destructive force of the disorder to both mind and body.
Kind of feel like putting the wig back on.
Unlike most tricksters in the documentary, Sophie Ehrman pulls hair not from her head, but from her body.
The difference between me and a lot of people that just have trick, I'm digging under my skin.
Sophie is a photographer and documented her struggle with trichotillomania in a series of disturbing photos. To her, each tiny hair in her leg is a monstrous flaw.
What is this?
This is literally how close I look at my body. Those are like hairs that are literally like growing. It's gross. I don't like the hair on my body, so...
Any of it?
No, none of it. I'd rather just be like a baby.
So in this effort to get rid of these hairs you think you see growing, you're essentially gouging at your own skin and making it
worse.
So if you were to take your tights off for me today, where on your legs would you have scars?
Like everywhere.
She showed me the raw wounds that force her to hide in tights and jeans, even on the hottest days of summer.
See how like there are all these dots?
Yeah.
So those are the hairs.
There must be a lot of people who cannot understand why you're doing this to yourself.
Join the crowd. Like, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing to myself. I know that I'm doing it to relieve anxiety, but what made me choose to pull out my hair? I have no clue.
The cause of trichotillomania is still a mystery, and doctors are still baffled about why it's primarily women who suffer from it. Sophie and Rebecca both doubt they will ever be pull-free.
Do I want to stop? Absolutely. Can I? I don't know.
Do you think you'll ever stop doing this, pulling? Really?
I feel I will be pulling till the day I die. I've been doing it 20 years, I don't know, but it's part of me.
Rebecca may never have that long blonde hair that she dreams of, but she's learned to love what she does have, and for now, better control the urge to pull.
There was a point I remember when, for the first time in years, I felt the wind go through my hair and it just pushed the fringe back and I was like, oh, wow, like,
Before we go tonight, a sneak peek at an incredible Diane Sawyer special coming up next Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern. Diane takes the trip back to where the hills are alive with Julie Andrews, the 50th anniversary of the release of the movie The Sound of Music.
You know this mountain, you know this song, and in 5 days,
we take you on an amazing journey beginning right here on the famous hill at the foot of the Alps.
Julie Andrews and Diane Sawyer travel to Austria to reveal the untold secrets of the sound of music.
Are you ready?
From what Julie was actually thinking in this romantic scene, to how the Von Trapps really escaped, not this way, but Diane discovered this way. And for the first time ever, Julie sees the home of the real Von Trapp family. Wednesday at 10, 9 Central, don't miss the spectacular event special, 50 years in the making on NBC.
So many stories about making that movie that you've never heard before. It was my favorite movie as a girl.
A lot of us watched.
And you won't be able to get that music out of your head. And tomorrow night, David and I will be back for a special 2020 Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern on a different kind of road trip. Watch this one before you hit the highway again. I'm Elizabeth Vargas.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at ABC News in 2020. Thanks for watching, and Elizabeth and I will see you tomorrow night. Good night.